Oh, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning indeed, because some of John's friends may well have tuned in. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. And if you're doing this as a replay, do a replay because it'll be whatever time it is. So, my name is Helena, and
And I'm Kelly.
and we are Speaker Insight, where we help speakers, authors, and coaches to really build a portfolio business on your terms. And today we are speaking about something that is present for pretty much every one of you. If you're a speaker, author, coach, if you're just a human being in the times that we're living in, pretty much today is going to tick a box for you in some way, shape, or form. We have the wonderful John Colby with us, and I will explain a little bit more as Kelly is sharing out various this live into the various places that we show up. So one of those is Changemaker Central, our membership. The other is the Connection Hub. And in the Connection Hub, that's a group for speakers, authors, and coaches, and indeed people who support them to be great speakers, authors, and coaches. And that's where I met John. So John actually showed up, I don't know, somewhere over the summer, I think, and joined. And then he and I ended up having a conversation about what he's been doing in these wonderful, fun times of ours. And I thought, you know what? That isn't just a conversation for John and I. That's a conversation for everyone because all of you need a little piece of the love that this man can bring into your lives. And I promise that it will be entertaining. And I literally do promise that. so, so I'm going to say that. Hi, Amy. Good morning. And hey, Regina. Nice to see you too. So we've got some US people with us right now. So as people are joining, Kelly, are you good? Yeah,
I'm just
probably.
shared out and I've
That's
just
good.
put the link to the Connection Hub where we met John. And if you're not in that group of speakers, authors, and coaches, then come and join us. We are just about to hit 8,500 members, I think, this week. So it's always
Exciting.
growing.
Yeah, so that's part of the buzz in our business. And the buzz in our business, we do want to know from those of you who've joined us live already, get your fingers on the keys and let us know what's going on for you that's fun, exciting, intriguing, that maybe just happened or that maybe is just about to happen. We don't mind either way. Hey, Andrew, nice to
No.
see you. So the buzz in our business, I am running. I'm in the December run up. I am doing the vision board workshops. The more than a vision board workshop that's coming up. So I'll pop a link in there for you just in case you actually do. And I even have one timed for my friends in the US on the 12th of December, which is good. So I'll be running it into the evening, whilst you kind of do it through the day. But the vision, more than a vision board workshop, is really a bunch of coaching and thinking into your future self and how you want this wonderful world of yours to be, despite all the, hi Kieran, despite all the weird and wicked circumstances that we've got going on. Kelly this week is going to be part of the Audience Expansion Summit.
No,
So we're going to be, go
2nd
on.
of December.
Oh,
Not
the
this.
2nd of December, the following week. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But
So
we've
I'll
got
put
a
a
link
link to
coming
that.
up for
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
I'll put a link to that in the Connection Hub when the registration goes live, which should be later on today. So if you want to be part of that, it's lots of great speakers actually talking about how to expand your audience. And I'm specifically focusing on Facebook and Facebook groups if you're interested in that area. And just a shout out to Kieran, actually. I know you've just joined, Kieran, but thank you for giving us a shout out in your blog this week and talking about gurus and the Connection Hub and
Pop the link in,
yeah,
Kieran.
put
Pop
the
the
link in,
link
Kieran.
into
Yeah,
it because
put the
it's
link
a
in the
really
story.
great article and it will really get you all thinking as well. So please pop the link in. That'd be great. Off he scuttles to go and do that. And while he's doing that, John, I'm going to let you introduce yourself in a moment. But for now, what is the buzz in your business?
So the buzz right now is the holiday season. So what's weird is typically for me, December for speakers is a little slower. It's the end of the year. You're not having a lot of keynote speeches. You're not having a lot of trainings going on because a lot of people are taking vacation time and holidays. So I thought that it would be kind of a low key month. It's my daughter's second birthday on December 15th. So I didn't really need, I need the whole month to celebrate my daughter anyway. But this situation that we've been put in has made people so hungry for engagement. People have been reaching out and saying, are you available to do a holiday type of virtual event? And I
Oh,
said, sure.
wow.
I'm like, what are you interested in? What do you want to improve on? And it's hilarious. I have CEOs of major corporations going, no, we don't want to learn anything. We just want to have fun. And I said, well, the bad news is I can't just give you fun. You're going to learn something. But the good news is you're going to have fun doing it. And so I've had some clients that I literally had to give a referral so they could have somebody else who's already had me in say, yeah, bring him in for this reason. But people are so excited for it. I booked in the last between Monday or Friday and Monday, I booked 4 new things, and they're pretty big things, and it's hilarious to just watch these roll in because people, like I keep saying, are so hungry for engagement. They're so hungry.
And that's so heartening, like to hear, as a set of, sort of either speakers who are doing that professionally and or people who are looking at using speaking in some way, sort of, yes, the industry shifted and changed, but how heartening for people to hear that actually you're just ramping up the busy as opposed to, sort of like going, oh, I don't know what's actually happening with that. So we've got... Yeah,
and the other thing I just want to say, and I'm looking for a link, which is why I'm looking at my phone.
No, are you looking for Kieran's link?
No.
Right.
Kieran just said he's going to put the link in later because he's on his phone. But John, it just sprung to my attention because there's a group that I'm part of, and that's what I'm putting the link for. Because again, other people might want to join this, but it's called the Delegate Wranglers, and it's a great group that basically. Always in there. What I'm seeing at the moment is people going, how do I hold virtual Christmas parties? And that's what you talking about that made me think about how they can do that. And they're constantly asking for people. So I am just got the link and paste, and cool. I've put the link in the comments. So John, yourself, but anybody else that's listening, it's a great group. It's mainly people there that are in the events space that are part of it. So suppliers and people that are events managers. But all I'm hearing at the moment is who can do these virtual. So if you want to be really busy, John.
I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah, please come back because I'm about to ask you just to, sort of why we've actually got you on here because, so as I say, we love growing the Connection Hub because it really is a special place of just the most talented, incredible humans. And, posts come in all the time around, oh, can I share my thing, etc. And we have a specific way in which we do that. And that's how I got to hear for John because he was offering to share his knowledge and his wisdom with the speakers, authors, coaches in the group. And I went, hang on a minute. Let's actually have a conversation. So we jumped on a conversation. This is the whole purpose of connection. You never know where a conversation is going to take you. So the invitation is there. So I literally pinged John and I went, hello, I think you're in the States, so I think it might be this sort of time, but are you free for a chat? And I think it was even over the weekend, but, I ignore that because we're entrepreneurial sorts. And, when opportunity and inspiration strike, we just follow that instinct. And
he's
sure
got
enough,
2-year-old. He's awake all the time.
It's true. It's actually very, very true. So this is how things also come about. So I just want to invite everyone to be really open around that. But when I then heard your story, that was what made me go, yes, let's put you in front of people. So please, whilst I know nobody else does, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do and how you got here, please.
Yeah. I was born in the summer of 1978.
I'm so going to slap you.
I married. My wife is also a teacher. I was a high school teacher for 15 years. I taught theater and video production. However, when I was in college, I found improv comedy and I started performing improv just as my release because I'm not a good singer. I can't paint. I don't drink, so I don't even like to go, sit in a bar. And I mean, I love karaoke. Don't get me wrong. But I started doing improv and I just fell in love with it. So I would teach during the week and I would perform on the weekends. And one time I was asked to fill in for one of the directors of the Improv Theater for a corporate workshop. And this was 2003. Can you teach this? I said, sure. So I taught it and I guess I got a good feedback from the client. So over the years, I was asked to do more. I moved to Chicago, which Chicago is the mecca of improv worldwide. So I moved to Chicago and studied it for a little while. And then I realized I didn't want to be poor. So I didn't want to try and do improv full time, because improvisers have a lot of fun, but they don't always make a lot of money. So I moved back to Indianapolis, where I live, and went back to teaching. But I started doing this speaking thing on the side. At first, it was just small workshops and smaller groups, and it got larger and larger. And it finally got to the point where I would teach on, say, a Tuesday, and then Tuesday after work, I would hop on a plane, fly to Boston or California. I would speak at a keynote speak at a large event on Wednesday morning. Then I would hop on a plane, fly back, and then go back to teaching on Thursday. So I would miss one day of school to do it. And I had a woman who actually I'm still good friends with now. We were in the limo on the way back to the airport, and she said, "So what do you got going on this week?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a teacher and I have to teach tomorrow." She's like, "What? What do you do?" And I said, "Yeah, it's just kind of, this is my side hobby." And she just looked me in the eye, dead serious, and said, "You need to quit your job." She said, "What you're doing," because I use improv when I speak. So even if it's a ballroom of 1,000 people, they all stand up and play a game. Then they move around and interact, and they're laughing, and because you learn more when you're laughing. And then she said, "It's just so powerful. People need this." So I quit my job in May of 2019. So it was just a year and a half ago.
Wow.
And so then I'm a religious person. I believe in God, and I think God hates me because I quit my job. And then in March of this year, things were starting to really roll. And then I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And so a client reached out to me. I was supposed to do a leadership retreat at the beginning of April. And he reached out and said, "Can you do what we were planning on doing virtually?" And I remember, and Kelly, you already mentioned this earlier, the number one rule of improv is yes and. So I took a moment and I said,
yes.
No, I don't think I can. and he's like, yeah, he goes, yeah, I thought so. It would be hard to recreate that magic. And when he said that, it kind of clicked. I'm like, I can recreate that. I said, honestly, can I have 2 days? Can I have 2 days to figure it out? So I spent the next 2 days. I'd done Zoom before, but it was for little things like, one-on-one or small group. I took a crash course on Zoom. I posted something on Facebook, said, "Hey, I want anybody I even did it on LinkedIn, anybody who's free tomorrow night at 7:00, I'm going to do an improv workshop on Zoom." So I got about 30 people together, and I kind of took some games that I thought might work. I invented some new games, and I kind of changed some, and then I did it. And then I did a 1 hour workshop, and then a lot of them stayed on for another hour and gave me feedback saying, "I like this. What about this?" And then the next day I called them back and said, "Let's do it." And so I did that one on April, I think it was 22nd. And then between April 22nd and whatever today is, November something. 24. Thank you. I have done probably 240 virtual events.
Wow.
Anywhere from, thank you. Anywhere from 6 people to 500 people. And they're all engaging and interactive. And now I've been called the virtual engagement officer, the virtual engagement expert, the virtual engagement guru. I'm not coming up with these because I didn't even think of that. People are like, so I'm like talking to them about leadership and communication, and they're going, how did you do the thing where we all went to rooms and then we had a whiteboard and I'm like, did you even listen to my content? Because we're so excited to play and not just listen to somebody talk. That people are coming to me asking to do more of this.
So Kelly, you can see, can't you, where I, sort of just listening to John and like the experience. So, the thing that I'm going to take, and I'll hand it over to Kelly in a second, but the thing I really want everyone listening already, and Kim says fantastic, by the way, she's highly approving of everything, right? So the thing I really want everyone to take heart from is that whole yes and can do thing, but also just that, let me have a tiny bit of time to rejig and to really, step back and go, how do I take what I do and actually turn it into something? So there is a yes, but there's also that whole let me be considerate about it so that I still deliver the quality, and I assure myself that I deliver the quality, and I really honor that in you, which then of course, and then I honor you really are an expert because you've just gone out there and done it and done it and done it and done it, and that's, practice makes permanent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's good. So Kelly, all
I
yours.
think on that thing, because we will go into detail in a minute about what improv is, because some people might be going, I've never heard of that word before. So we will elaborate a little bit. But there are lots of improv specialists out there that are already working in corporate, already working with people. And I think what your stories highlighted is, even though I hate the word pivot, it really showed how you reacted to the situation that you were in and gave it some thought, as Helena said. But really what you've actually done is you've discovered a niche for yourself, because you've got the improv, but the virtual element with the improv is actually what everyone's needed, right? We are all zoomed out. I'm sure, everyone watching this live, whether it's a year down the line or whenever, COVID has just made us become so reliant now on interacting and connecting and delivering via a digital means. And unfortunately, it's probably done really badly most of the time, whether that's managing, hosting meetings, whether that's keynote presentations, whether that's workshops. People haven't had the skills and the understanding to adjust for breaks, for levels of engagement, for constantly, not losing eye contact with people, which is actually why people feel so tired all the time. All these various elements weren't taught to them when they were learned to be a presenter or a speaker. So before we get into what improv actually is, can you just tell us a little bit more about how you support people to deliver virtually to make things more engaging, and give them an idea, whether they're a coach or a speaker, how they can start delivering differently and digitally?
Yeah.
Hard to say.
Yeah, I was just say that's so easy for you to say. So now let me make it make sense. So the thing I caution anyone to do is to share too much of your own expertise. We could all talk all day, but my master's in education and my background in teaching says I can talk all the time. But one of my favorite stats is if you listen to a 10-minute speech, 30 minutes later, you're only going to remember 50% of it. A week later, you'll only remember 25% of it. And a month later, you'll only remember 10% of it. And that's a 10-minute speech. So you're only going to remember
terrifying.
Right. So when I'm hired to do a keynote for an hour, or I do virtual, I do virtual events that are 2 or 3 hours long. And so when people are planning on talking the whole time, that's why people aren't turning their cameras on. People aren't turning their cameras on because they're checking their email, and let's be honest, playing on their phone. They're playing all their, Candy Crush or whatever. And then every now and then you'll say, hey, now we're going to do a quick polling question. So everybody tell me. And then they read off a couple of them. It's just like, oh, Janice, you love pizza. Oh, Roger, I see you like hamburgers. And they call that their engagement. I'm like, that's not engagement. That's just like, and that's so what I do is, and I've spoken at some large association events, and I have to convince the people running it, I understand you've paid for this platform, but this platform is just a webinar. So if you want to do that, honestly, if you're going to do that, and I've talked to everybody out of it, but if you are speaking in a generic webinar type thing, do me a favor, pre-record yourself so that you can now interact with people in the comments while they watch you, right?
Nice.
But I talked to every one of my clients, and honestly, I turned one down because they were just so steadfast on what they were doing. I said, then you don't want me. I'm not going to give you what your idea is. So then what I do is we always use Zoom, because Teams has been promising breakout rooms since April. It's literally November. They're saying November now. By the way, those of you watching 2 years in the future,
yeah.
This year in 2020, people lied a lot. Okay. So now back to now. So what I'll
Let's
do,
not even get into American presidents. Right?
Just no.
Actually, I was in the UK in 2018 when he came to visit. I know how you all feel about our president. and I feel the same way. Okay.
I'm going to moderate. Put back on track, please.
Okay. So what I do is when they enter the room, the very first thing I normally do is play a game where I ask yes or no questions. But if your answer is yes, you turn your camera on. If your answer is no, you turn your camera off. And guess what? The last question I ask is typically something around, are you ready to have fun? And if people don't turn their cameras on for that, I know it's going to be a rough day, right? So now their cameras are on, and guess what? And what I've done is I've activated their brains, because what I do is I say, everybody go in the chat, send a private message to me and tell me things that you love. And not like your family, but like foods, travel spots. Because what I've done now is I get their dopamine and their serotonin flowing because they're thinking about happy things. And now they're turning on the cameras and they're like, dogs, yeah, I love it. So they're smiling. They're seeing other smiling faces. But research says when you have those happy chemicals flowing, you now associate the person you're with and the environment you're in more positively. So I already have made you like Zoom more and me more by activating your brain. Now, throughout our time together, we'll play a game where I'll send you off with a partner and you'll talk. And again, you're talking about if you were making a meal for a friend, what would you make? But now you have to do this following a certain rule, like each letter of your sentence has to start with the next letter of the alphabet. So Helena, you would be A, and then Kelly, you'd be B, and you go through that. Yeah. And then we come back and say, okay, you got to laugh and have fun with your friend for 90 seconds, but were you actually listening to your partner talk, or were you going through the alphabet and then thinking about what you were going to say next? Because that's what too many of us do in real life. If you're a coach, what you should do is fully listen and then allow some silence to process and then respond back. If you're a parent, that's what you should be doing. If you're a boss, that's what you should be doing. But that's not what we do. Research says most of us plan what we're going to say while they're talking so that we look smart. But what you don't look is compassionate. And right now, people want to feel like they matter more than ever. So we play all these games with the breakout room. We play one where we play a game, then we come back. And I'm like, now I want you to give me your answers, but don't tell me. I pull up the whiteboard and I say, write it on there, and you can handwrite, or you can draw it if you want to draw your answer. And so again, it just allows different mindsets to work in different ways. And what they're not doing is just listening to me say the answer. And so they leave energized. They leave ready to make connection. And then I always say, hey, we also have a couple minutes left. If you want to go into the chat and private chat somebody, send them your email, send them your phone number, and follow up on the conversation you were having, because I can't allow you to have the full conversation. But what I did was start it. And what I did is Joe in marketing, you just put a comment in there saying that you've never even talked to Christy in sales. So now Joe and Christy talk, collaborate. It's a company of 20 people. You should all know each other so that you can get the best from each other. And so they leave empowered with this connection that they have. They leave excited from the time that we spend together. And research says happy people are more successful anyway. So I'm going to increase your ROI because you're in a good mood.
And so this is the thing, right? Because you're an expert in this field. So there are various ways that people can work with you. I know the corporates that are booking you at the moment are the ones that are basically saying, come into our world, energize our workplace, enhance the team dynamics, enhance the learning, get us feel more aligned, more purposeful, more energized. But also there is elements of what you teach that the individuals watching this live can go, oh my God, these are different icebreakers that I've never thought about before. These are different exercises that I can do to make my workshops more interactive. So I don't want you to think, oh my God, John is our savior, because he is, but you can also bring those elements, right, into what you're delivering in your own workshops and seminars and coaching itself. So it's really, I just want to highlight that point because I think it's so important. And what's the quote, Helena? You're the quote mistress. It's not about how you make them think; it's how you make them feel.
How you make them feel, yeah.
Right?
Maya
That's
Angelou.
the thing. Yeah. I say it all the time about keynote speakers is that they will remember you
for sure.
About how you made them feel. That thing about losing, not remembering, however many weeks down the line from a 10-minute presentation, and so. What we're losing in this space of delivering virtually is we're losing the connection, we're losing the feeling. And so we need to amplify ourselves so that we come across much more dynamically than just we would be sitting on a like we're doing now, but it's also the emotional connection, the compassion, which is really important, I think. And that's why we're feeling so drained by Zoom meetings, because there is none of that going on, or hardly ever.
Well, and it, sorry, John, it really highlights to me, you know, I love that you are sharing so generously, because of course, the more we all, as, you know, I think of speakers, authors and leaders as people who have, whether they like it or not, stepped into a leadership position, that are, you know, that are being viewed and watched, and, you know, what you do, you know, if you see something that works, copy it, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, give credit where credit is due. That's a given.
We've got a live on that.
Yeah, we do have a live on that. Of course we do. In fact, it was quite a ranty live from what I remember. But anyway.
It was a Jay Shetty based live. That's what it was.
Yes, I recall very well, you know, sort of, but actually, you know, there is a position of leadership and ownership that I love that you've stepped into this space, and that you are bringing back that connection piece that allows people to just, you know, do things slightly differently. And of course, once you know something, you can't unknow it. So people may just actually do I could experiment with this camera on and off thing, or whatever it is, you know, that really works. But one of the things I love that you said, and then I'll ask about,
just on that, because I know that, you know, Helena and I are quite aware of improv, but are there any resources? I know I've read that Yes and book, but is there any books or any things that you think people could look at?
Hang on. So I'm going to backtrack in that case. I'll stop saying, John, you just stay where you are whilst Kelly and I have a little debate between us, and then, you know.
I'll go check out the link. Kelly told me to check out earlier. Go ahead.
Right. So what I was actually going to say, and then I'll ask you about improv, and then we can do resources, because I think it's important, is actually this piece that I love that you brought in around how do we help ourselves show up as more compassionate, because I think that really, and you know, that importance of pausing and holding a space for people to actually connect to themselves, and then connect to what's being asked or what's being said, and then being able to have them feel safe enough to say what they're actually saying, because I think in a room it works differently to in a virtual room potentially. So I really love that you've highlighted that. And now I'm going to let you speak. Improv, you know, there may well be some people who are still going, I'm not quite sure what that is. So can you explain improv to people who don't know what it is, and how that really benefits you, and how they can use it in their presentation style?
So I'm going to put a pin in that and go back and talk about something you said, because if you're allowed to do it, I'm allowed to do it too. So you talked about the compassion piece. When I started doing, again, June of 2019, I looked at, for me, I speak, but I do a little bit of coaching, but my passion is more speaking. I kind of looked at it as it's me against the world. It's me against everybody else, every other speaker out there. I'm like, I'm better than them, or I think my message would be more powerful. And I have this, I've got to position myself as the best and kind of, you know, defend my territory. And boy, do I feel stupid even admitting that, because I joined the National Speakers Association, and then I found the Hub, and I found some other groups, and I'm like, oh wait, so the people that are good are just sharing everything, are just making everybody else better, because what we do is we lift each other up. And so, I mean, if we try and undercut each other on price, well, guess what? We're just driving down the price for everybody. So yeah, exactly. So what I've done is I've offered, and unfortunately I'm not offering one right now just because my December is really full, but I've been offering these free workshops from time to time, just saying, hey, if you want to do virtual better, let's do this. And it's for speakers, authors, coaches. This isn't for corporate clients. This isn't for me trying to like sell it. I actually had some people reach out the last time I did one. So it's like, oh, so is your goal to get hired by some of us to help? I'm like, no, I don't. If you go to my website, I don't use the word coach. That's not what I do. And in fact, I've made a couple friends through this that I now consider myself a little bit of a coach or a mentor, but I don't charge them, because everything I'm doing. Like if I hadn't talked to people, well, remember the first woman who said, quit your job. She was kind of my first coach, but people all along the way have guided me to where my fees are a lot higher than they were. They've guided me to look into industries that I hadn't. They've showed me the way. So all I'm trying to do is go, hey, a couple people dragged me up to here. So now let me reach down and drag some. So if there are newer, speakers especially, but if there are other coaches that have questions about what I'm doing, I mean, I'm in the hub, so reach out and say, hey, can we have 15 minutes to chat, and I'd be happy to help you. And again, I can't promise.
John,
I just put your website address down there for people to connect with you as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. And I think potentially maybe I'll just, I'll take a vote on it with everyone, but maybe we'll get John to do one of these virtual presentations into the Connection Hub or somewhere. I'll work on getting something set up that allows our group of 8,500 to kind of at least put their hands up for it. Let's do that. Now, back to improv.
Improv. Okay.
For goodness sakes, right?
So the concept of improv, which we've already alluded to, is yes and. It just means start from a place of agreement and then allow everybody to add ideas. So think about that in your work life, in your home life. Are you an agreeable person off the bat? And some people say, well, I like to play the devil's advocate. I like to kind of get them to think about the other things. I said, that's fine at some point. But if you become the devil's advocate all the time, when you're not around, they're not using that word. They're calling you a butthole or something worse. And it's because what you're doing is shooting down ideas. You're shooting down innovation. Yeah. And Helena, you already said this. People want to feel, right? More than they want to learn, they want to feel. Forbes.com did a research study in 2018 saying, why do people leave their jobs? And the number one reason isn't money. It's not upward mobility. It's they want to feel valued. They want to feel like they matter in that space. And guess what? If you're a parent, your kids want to feel valued. If you're with friends, they want to feel valued. And so future people, don't listen to this part, but in 2020, we need to make sure we're reaching out to people who are quarantined at home and they're not around people, and they're going to remember the friends that we're reaching out to them in this tough time. But guess what? When you reach out to a client, say, hey, I'm offering this, I'd love to help you out, and they can't afford it, and say, well, then let's just give you a price break. And they're going to remember the people who took care of them or offered it for free or did some type of weird compromise that was much better for them than it was for the speaker or the coach. But then when we're back to prosperity, they're going to remember those people that made them feel that way. So
that's it. Kim's just actually popped in here, which I think summarizes this really nicely. Collaboration over competition. Don't compete with anyone but yourself, right?
Yeah. Kim, where were you in June of 2019? So the yes and, I digress a lot. I'm sorry.
It's all right. We love it.
The yes part means that we find the agreement, and that's where idea generation comes from. That's where I now feel empowered to go to my boss and share a new idea without fear of being shot down immediately. And that's where the and comes in. Everybody within the organization should feel like they're going to be heard or they won't speak up. So if I'm on stage with somebody and they're what we always call steamrolling, if I'm steamrolling and not giving them a chance to talk, their brain is literally going to stop looking for ideas. And then if I do get quiet, they're not going to be helpful. And guess what? That's when in a job they quit. So if I want people to be that positive and engaged person, if I have kids and I say, go do your homework, and I'm just yelling at them to do their homework, I'm literally closing their brain so they're less happy. They're less likely to be engaged. Now, when I ask, how's school? They're going to say, fine. How's school? Fine. You're not going to get anything. But when people feel like, hey, tell me about what you're learning. And when they tell you something, you ask a follow-up question. Everybody, listen, if you're working with a new client, as soon as they say anything, ask a follow-up question, because that gives them more of a chance to talk. And guess what? You're activating their dopamine and their serotonin. They're happy talking to you. They associate you with those happy feelings, and that's when they hire you.
Nice.
Yeah. I was going to say something. I'm not going to.
And just that's a choice.
I think that's a big problem, because yes and means speak out if you have to.
Yeah.
Right? Don't.
No, I was going around and around. So interestingly, I was taking us into the sales call scenario because, of course, what you're talking about here is, everybody's doing discovery calls, sales calls, whatever you want to call them, in this space as well, or hopefully are, and are making themselves available to that. And, woe betide you if you get on a call with me, because I'm going to sort out somebody somewhere, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else. I am going to put you in touch with someone that can help you with your problem for exactly that reason, sort of because I sit and I do my best to allow people to experience the experience so that they can actively just connect more to what's required and desired, right? Where it comes down.
And I think what you're saying, I think we're linking back to that. People want to do stuff that they enjoy, that it's fun. People learn more and have positive association when they're doing it in that way, when it's more interactive. There's lots of studies. I remember when I started to have a publishing house and actually talk about integrative learning, that when you learn from just a theory in a textbook, it just goes on one level. When you're practically doing something, you're learning it on a cellular level, you're learning it's in your DNA. So therefore it's easy to recall because you've got a first-hand experience of it rather than a theoretical experience. So I'm just elaborating a little more on what improv allows these people to do. So the fun, the engagement, the positive association, the deep learning. And I mean, when you look at your website, John, and people will see the areas where, it's about leadership, it's about team, it's about creativity. What you're actually enabling people, whether that's individuals or teams, is to expand and to actually stop being pigeonholed in how they can speak, what they can do, what they have influence over.
Yeah.
I know you've given some examples of what you would do to make meetings more interactive, but people might not know what happens in improv. So sometimes it could be like telling the stories and people have to do another word. So can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah,
I forget there are muggles out there.
for
people
sure.
who don't do improv, I call them muggles. We're wizards, we're muggles. So the most familiarized a lot of people are is with Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's a show started in the UK. But the idea is a group of people, or it can even be solo improv, which I don't like because I'm like, who are you interacting with? We take a suggestion from the audience and then we play some type of game, scene, or song based off of it. So I have a 2-man show called Dudesicle. It's 2 dudes doing a musical where we take an occupation and a problem. And then we take those 2 things and then we write a 30 to 45-minute musical where we play all the characters, and it's all made up off, the songs, the script, the storyline, everything's made up off the top of our head. So the concept is we entertain people without a script, but they help write it by giving suggestions. So one of the most classic games is the audience writes lines from movies or songs on a piece of paper, and then we do a scene, but at any point we pick up a paper and read it, and then we justify why our character would say those lines. So it's on stage, it's all about just making choices, being in the moment as characters. So even if you're singing, like I'm not a great singer, but my characters are. And so they put on a show, So
archetypes, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So it's that confident yes and approach that works, because when we first start, if Kelly and I hop on stage together, the suggestion from the audience is a Ferris wheel. We have no idea where we're going to go, but one of us says something. And here's the thing. When we start, the example I always give is maybe the audience says milk as a suggestion. Well, right away, I think cow. I'm going to milk a cow. But Kelly's like, I'm just going to open the refrigerator and pour some milk, right?
So I was actually thinking breastfeeding.
All right. I mean, I'm fine with a yes and means I'll go with whatever. So if I start to walk over to a cow and then Kelly starts breastfeeding a baby, I have to adjust my idea so that Kelly's not breastfeeding in a barn, So if I still try and force my idea and they try and force their idea, guess what? It's going to be a real clunky scene. So when you are sitting at a conference table with a group of people, are you trying to force your idea and not listening to other people's idea? Or are we listening and being flexible, which I use the word flexible instead of pivot. I've been using the word for years. 2020, everybody says pivot. I'm like, I've been using flexible for 20 years. So, but flexibility that allows us to work together. And a cool thing is, even if the scene goes into breastfeeding, the fact that I'm now contributing to that, I now feel like I'm part of the success of the scene.
That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas if I try and force this cow thing and then Helena comes in and it ends up being about breastfeeding, I feel like, well, I didn't get my way. Just like in the business world, people are like, well, I didn't get my way. But I'm like, if you learn this yes and, we all feel like we were part of the solution, even if we didn't go with your original idea.
And I think that's one of the key things around this for me, you know, in the times that we're in and in general, you know, the more acknowledgement and a sense of belonging, because, you know, that isn't necessarily acceptance, but acknowledgement is a really big piece. You know, I acknowledge that you just threw something in the ring and actually we've taken a look at it and maybe it doesn't fit right now and that sort of thing. But what that does is it creates belonging. And you know, one of the fundamental needs that we have as humans is this sense of belonging. You know, being ostracized is one of the worst things that you could possibly do to anyone. And you can go back in history right the way from that. You know, that's encoded in our DNA. So the fact that you are bringing that in and that everyone can bring a level of that in through how they choose to operate, manage, organize the meetings, the keynotes, the presentations that they're giving. You know, if we can just start paying attention to how do I pay attention, that actually makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, I always say our goal isn't to agree. Our goal is to understand. If we can at least understand the other side, then we can find common ground a whole lot easier. And it's not an argument, it's a conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Just so that you're aware, a couple of people did actually just sort of chip in, and I do want to acknowledge those people as it is. So Kieran actually said a little while back, communication can be something of a lost art form nowadays. That's why different is good and humor transcends barriers, which of course is good. And lots of people are in approval of the classic show that is Whose Line Is It Anyway? And Kim says she's been using plot twist
instead of her pivot or flexibility.
Yeah,
and I think, you know, what you were saying, it really does for me when you, especially in corporations, it's a real good metaphor, actually an illustration of how companies are working and when they use improv, because you actually see the dynamics that happen. But what's beautiful is actually, I feel it creates a level playing field. There are sometimes the CEO of the company is there with the newbie that's just come on board and they're having a script and they're seeing how they work together. And that person would never have even looked at that CEO in the corridor. So it's a really good team building exercise, as well as also looking at the dynamics in a team. But I do want to highlight that some people that might be like myself, and, you know, we've done a live on this a while ago, that I'm an introvert. I'm a complete introvert. So when somebody first told me about improv and that I couldn't I plan everything. I plan what I'm going to wear the next day, the night before I go to bed. So the fact that I'm having to stand on stage, pick something out of a hat, scared the life out of me, because I thought, I'm going to fail. I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to go blank. I don't want to be seen. I'm an introvert. But actually, weirdly, it's the most freeing experience for a structured introvert. And actually, you realize that when you let go of some of that identity, you can be a lot more creative and a lot more than you think you can be. So I don't want people to be put off if they're thinking, I can't sing, I can't do karaoke, I can't. What's he saying?
It's Ian. I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but you know, Ian is a pattern interrupter in and of himself.
Ian's the funniest accountant we've ever met, right?
Yeah, truly. So this gives you context to this next comment.
That's a low bar, though. That's a pretty low bar.
he reaches fairly high. Okay. So he says, I think humor in the workplace is totally inappropriate. However, breastfeeding in a barn is a must. Oh, Ian, we adore you in our world.
But yes, so my point here is what I want to highlight, because again, we've got people coming and watching this from all different areas and all different incentives, is how can this style of delivery work for both corporates and the individual themselves? How can they use improv?
So for me, the idea to address your introvertedness, when we do stuff in my workshop, even if it's just 5 or 6 people or it's a ballroom of 1,000, you're never on stage. Like I don't have people get up and perform in front of everybody. Everybody's doing the activity at the same time. So you find a partner. Or virtually, I push a breakout room button, and maybe you're a group of 2, you're a group of 4, depending on the game. Then you go off and play that game. Then you come back and we talk about it. So what it does is it allows us to assess ourselves individually while we're playing together. And I want to. You said, it's freeing when we realize that we can kind of do anything. I always say the number 1 rule of improv is yes, and everybody in improv agrees with that. For me, the number 2 rule is there are no mistakes. You can't mess up. So anything you say is right. The only time you can say something wrong in improv is if you call somebody else out for their choice.
Right, nice.
Because when you do that, you now put them in their head, and now for the rest of the time, they're so worried about saying something wrong. So I always give this classic example. I was on stage. We were talking about the best presidents in our country's history. And I said Abraham Lincoln, and the other guy said George Washington, 2 of the big ones. Well, the third guy on stage heard us saying that, and he said Benjamin Franklin. And now those of you in the UK might not know, Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill, just like Washington and Lincoln. He's on a bill. So you would think he might be a president. He was a forefather. He did a lot of great things, but he wasn't. In that moment, the 2 of us, we could have called him out and like, you idiot, he wasn't a president. And the audience would have laughed like you're doing now, but then he would have been useless.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So instead, I was like, yes, Benjamin Franklin was definitely one of the best presidents. Who else was a good president? I looked at the other guy and he goes, Tom Hanks. And so what we did for the rest of the scene, we made a playful moment out of a mistake instead of calling somebody else and making them feel small.
It's a new thread. Yeah.
Yeah. So once you hear those kind of stories about like, oh, I can make Tom Hanks the president. Like now people start playing these games and they start assessing themselves as we go through. So when you're playing improv, whether I'm playing with a group of people or I've literally been hired to coach people one-on-one and say, can you help me be better using some improv things? We just play games. And I point out, like when we're playing virtually, we're just playing these games and then afterwards we kind of dissect it and they're like, but I said the wrong thing. And I'm like, did I call you out on it? Well, no. I'm like, honestly, that was the most fun part when we had.
Or this thing wouldn't have happened.
Yes,
and that's it. It's that acknowledgement that actually, when we goof up in some way, 9 times out of 10, it gives permission to so much else to happen that actually, if you hadn't goofed up in that way, that it actually works well. Now people are playing this game. So Kieran's going JFK. Kieran's then said Morgan Freeman has also been a good president.
But you know what? I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Yeah, for sure. I actually, I would put a tick in a box for sure.
Right?
So Ian is also one of our NLP coaches, as well as an accountant, as well as a comedian. Very random combination, but metaphors are useful in coaching. I'm thinking improv exercise can help with your metaphor creation. Now that's an insight very few accountants would come up with. Definitely. Well, sure. You are a penguin in a sea of peacocks in the accountancy world, Ian.
Which is just beautiful. So John, because I'm aware of time, I because we could speak to John for a long time, right? Which is great. But how can people connect with you? I know Kelly put a link in earlier, but how can people learn more about, sort of improv itself, but also your work? And that does come down to some of those resources that Kelly also just spoke about. Yeah,
any books, anything you can direct people to, John, would be great.
Well, Ian, if you have not read Humor That Works by Andrew Tarvin, you should read that book. Drew and I are actually friends. He's an improv guy, originally from Ohio, which is right next to Indiana. But he worked for Procter & Gamble for a long time and spun a job at Procter & Gamble, calling himself the humor engineer. And he learned how to, because he has an engineering, he's a nerd. He says, if you know Myers-Briggs, he's an INFJ.
Okay.
If you know Star Wars, he's a C-3PO. One of my favorite jokes. But we talked about the idea of humor doesn't mean you need to be a funny person. It just means you need to allow to be less serious in the workplace. So Humor That Works is a great book. If you're looking for exercises to use, you can go to improvencyclopedia.org. And that website has been created and cultivated over maybe 2 decades. It's been around for a long time. And there are so many different, there's one group called Icebreakers, and there's another group called Warm-Ups, and there's another one just called Improv Games. And I challenge you to read through, and some of it's just the title of the game. You have to click on it and read it. And you're like, well, that game would make no sense to me. I challenge you to play 6 Degrees of Separation from Kevin Bacon. Are you aware of that game? Right?
Hell yes.
I know the concept, but I didn't know we had a game.
Yeah.
So Kelly, name a celebrity
That I'm connected to.
No, just give me a celebrity.
Donald Trump.
She had to go there.
No, Kelly, you can go sit in timeout. The adults are going to talk for a minute.
This is the one time where we exclude somebody.
So now what you can do this in the chat if you want to play along. So I need you to get from Donald Trump to Kevin Bacon through movies. So Donald Trump was in Home Alone with Catherine O'Hara, and then you get, and basically, and I'm not going to do the whole thing right now, but in you can get from that actor to Kevin Bacon. You can get to anybody to Kevin Bacon within 6 rounds. They say that.
Yeah.
So now here's what I tell people: go on improvencyclopedia.org and pick a game, and then go, okay, how can this game be used in your line of work? How could this connect to what you do? And in one iteration, most of the times it might not work. There are some that where you go, oh, wait, if we do this, we could talk about it like that. And that's the game. And then you can actually play that. But what I'm challenging you to do is to start activating your brains outside the boxness. I like to say, if you ever take a road trip across the United States, you're going to come across several mountain ranges. There are times when your car just kind of drives around it, and then off in the distance you see the mountain, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful, and you keep driving, right? There are other times where your car has to drive up into the mountain and then back over it, and you can look over the edge. The UK is especially bad at this. It's terrifying. There's like no shoulder, there's no rail. It's like, if I sneeze, I would die, right? Then there are times in the US where when you get to a mountain, engineers have literally drilled a hole and your car drives through the mountain. So when you feel stuck and you're like, well, I'm speaking on this topic, there's no way I could use an improv game. I'm like, okay, so you got to your mountain and you just stopped. You didn't you decided you couldn't get to the other side. Find a way around it. I have worked with speakers, somebody that works on school safety with like shootings and COVID regulations and all these different ways, going, okay, how could I inject some type of lighthearted humor into this heavy topic? Guess what? We figured out how to do it. I've had people talk about sexual harassment. I've had people talk about just mental health and all these heavy issues. And I'm like, you're not going to play a game about poop and farts, but there is something that you can do that is a little playful, that lets people interact so that their brain is active. So they're going to remember the important things you're telling them in a more memorable way. So don't think outside. And again, you put my johncolby.com. It's a very clever, my name is John Colby. So johncolby.com is the most thing I could come up with. But if you have a question and you're like, okay, this is what I speak on, or this is what I coach on, I have no idea how I'd use that, reach out and we'll try and find a way to make it work. And I'll be completely honest, and Helena, you said earlier, if you find something that works, give credit, but use it. In improv, we say good improvisers borrow, meaning you're like, oh, that's a cool concept. I'll try it. And then you kind of get rid of it. But we say great improvisers steal. Take it and make it your own. Because if one of you does a fantastic impression, I go, oh, I'm going to try and use that impression. It's not going to sound exactly the same just because of the tone of my voice and just the differences, I'm going to adapt it. Just like if you take a game that I talk about, you're not going to play it exactly as I do. And don't give me credit. I don't care, because half the things I'm doing, I've stolen from somebody else. So let's just steal it forward.
And I love Steal It Forward. Oh my God, that feels like a fantastic place to end this, because that's just amazing, right? Like it does put me in mind of the old the book Steal Like an Artist, and it really is that, you know, that whole collaborative piece, the whole, you know, that non-competition that Kim was mentioning earlier. Everything about this conversation has been about how do we all make it easier for people to relate in this slightly weird world that isn't quite the same as it was, that we're all in and participating in. And it is a universal global experience for all of us right now, which is really unusual. And so anything that we can do to bring love and light to that, well, John, you've definitely succeeded, I think, today.
And I tell people, don't wait for the world to get back to normal, because it's not going to. Like,
for sure.
the things that have happened. Before this pandemic, I'd spoken in 29 states in the U.S. I'm now up into the 30s, but I've also spoken on 5 continents. And so it is in like opened up our world to new possibilities. Don't wait to go back. Let's move forward. Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to say this, Kim ends us with thank you for a wonderful hour. And I so agree, Kim. And John, just thank you for sharing so generously. Really wonderful.
Connect with John in the Hub, visit his website. I'm sure when he gets some
a little bit of time, we might just see what we can do with that. We will let you know. Take care, everyone. Have a good, productive week.